Hi everyone, Fran here. What's the worst thing that a parent could go through? That's right, the death of a child. My guest on Hopenning this week is Professor Jeralyn Glass, a Broadway singer, operatic singer, world-renowned, who went through that grief of her son at the tender age of 19 years old. The interview is about how she used her grief and transformed into helping others heal through her use of the crystal singing bowls. She also gives us a demonstration, and it's quite profound, of how vibrational healing energy works in the body. I hope you stay with us, and welcome to the Hopenning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopenning. This is the place where hope is happening, and it's an honor and a privilege to have Jeralyn Glass, who is so internationally recognized as a multi-dimensional musician, here with me today. Thank you, Jeralyn, for joining me.
Thank you, Fran, for inviting me. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you.
You know, you have worked hundreds of shows. You've sang hundreds of times on Broadway. Then you went to Europe, internationally renowned operatic star. You came back to the United States after living in Germany for many years, and you continued your craft here. But once upon a time, you were a high school student. How would your friends have described you in high school?
That's a very funny question. The first thing that comes to mind is I remember being like 15 and having my group of friends say to me, "Why do you have to be so deep? Can you just like why do you have to be like so deep?" And I remember thinking, "Deep? What's that?" Because I didn't really get what they were talking about, but I was always very thoughtful and interested in depth, I guess. So that was the first thing that popped to my mind is just that and feeling like, yeah, but this is the way I am and this is the way I want to be. And it's important to question and to ask and to go deeper into things.
And I'm the same way. I think curiosity is so important. It's such an important skill to have, not just curious about other people, but also curious about ourselves and not curious about what's more. There's something more out there. And you've got your beautiful arrangement of crystal bowls. I read your book, Sacred Vibrations. It came out in 2024, and it's got, I think, Jeralyn, I counted 12 pages of internationally recognized healers and celebrities who gave you amazing reviews for that book.
Mhm.
Like beautiful. I mean, you've played your crystal bowls for people like Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Lynn McTaggart, Sue Morton is one of your best friends, Marianne Williamson, Maria Shriver. But it didn't happen like that. You started out using your voice differently. At the beginning of the book, you've got this beautiful quote: Music is love in search of a word. How did it start? How did this morph into these 500 singing bowls that you have behind you?
I think, Fran, there's so many things in life that you just simply cannot plan. And your life will take you in different directions, and it's up to us to embrace that, to say yes. Just like as a high school, I was like, no, I am deep and I enjoy being deep. And I remember feeling sort of judged by that, and then just grounding in, no, this is how I want to live life. um, I knew as a child that music was going to be my path. I knew that I wanted to sing. I remember very clearly being outside on our front porch and twirling around and just like moving my body and making little melodies up. And I felt a strong presence of God. I felt a strong presence of something bigger than myself. And I just had this feeling, you know, you hear inside yourself, this will be your path. Music is your life. Music is what you're all about. And that's indeed what happened. And in the sixth grade, I sang a solo uh, with the middle school choir, and people said to my parents, "What are you going to do? She's talented." And my mom had been a singer as a young girl. She was like a Shirley Temple double. She tap danced and she sang. She sang on the good ship Lollipop. So she had that in her. So I had that in my blood. And then my mom took me to a neighbor who was a very well-known singer. She had dubbed the voice of Ava Gardner in the MGM musical Showboat, and she had dubbed all of Lucille Ball's movies, and just an incredible singer, Annette Warren Smith, and she's 103 to this day and still can sing. It's pretty incredible. And my mom took me to her, and that started a relationship when I was 11 of her mentoring and guiding me into the power of you as your unique instrument, you know, and that each of us have our own sound. You know, we laugh when comedians mimic other people's voices, you know, but each one of us has our own unique voice. And my dream then became to be on Broadway, and I achieved that. And it was like, now when I look back, and I'm a professor of voice, and when I work with some of the students, and I recognize like that's not an easy feat, you know, to make happen, but it happened. And so I feel like my life, the doors opened, I don't want to say necessarily easily, but they opened, and I knew that they were meant to be. And then when I recognized, I explored classical music, and I remember seeing La Boheme at the Metropolitan Opera and just feeling like, wow, this is something even beyond what I had been exposed to. And then my career shifted into that direction. I went and studied in Italy, and suddenly there I was starting to sing opera and receiving roles, and it just, the doors open and I followed. I said yes. I said yes to where the energy was moving me. And I think I always knew, because I started so young, I always knew that this instrument was so precious, because so many of the things that I sang were without amplification. And you have to get into this feeling of, I'm a vocal athlete. I am an athlete that's allowing these two tiny vocal cords to project what you said earlier, the quote that I love so much, music is love, you know. And so through your own voice and through being able to sing, I started in My Fair Lady with Rex Harrison on Broadway. I did Jesus Christ Superstar, Showboat, and then to go into Mozart and Puccini and Verdi and Bach and Handel. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's so much incredible music that touches us in very many different ways, you know. And music can remind us of certain things. Suddenly we hear a piece of music and we're crying, or suddenly we hear a piece of music and we want to get up and dance. Like, music is truly something that every human being understands. And learning to sing in Italian and French and German and Czech, like, it doesn't matter, because music is that language of the heart. It truly connects us.
You did all of the opera singing well, you lived in Germany at the time, correct?
And I started the singing opera actually in my hometown of Los Angeles with and then I sang all over the United States. And then a door opened for me to go and study as an apprentice at the Zurich Opera. And there was only 4 Americans that they took. And so I said yes. And then that opened a whole door to starting to perform throughout Europe. So it was very, very cool.
And then the highlight of your life, the birth of your son, Dylan. Yeah. And your book, Sacred Vibrations, I'm getting goosebumps. When I get goosebumps, I know there's spirit, right? Your beautiful son, Dylan, was born, and he would have turned 30 in January. Yeah. And together, you and Dylan traveled a lot. And actually, he was born early. Can you tell us a little bit about that, this magic birth date?
This is Dylan. So this is when he's a teenager. This is Dylan. And Yeah, I was singing a series of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. So for those of you who are familiar with that, or those who are not, the melody, the famous melody from that is da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dum da 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 dum. So that's the we know that in the English language as joyful, joyful, we adore thee. But that theme is from the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, and that piece was revolutionary because he had four movements, an incredible big orchestra, and then the last movement is a choir with four soloists. So I was one of the four soloists, the soprano soloist, and I was touring Germany, and we had a series of 9 performances, and I was very pregnant. And you know, my doctor had said it's no problem. You are healthy and you can sing until the day you give birth. And that was pretty much what happened. Dylan came early. I finished, I think, a week before he was born, and then he was knocking, "Mom, I'm ready." And it was really fun. My first, I'm going to say, sort of experience of music truly being a medicine outside of how good it felt to me always was that whenever my son would cry, I would put on that music of the Ninth Symphony, and boom, he was still as a mouse. And it was like, this is incredible. I don't need anything else except for Beethoven to help calm down my son. It was very sweet because he knew that music. He knew every vibration of that, being in his mommy's womb when she was singing.
I've got a little story too. My daughter, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I went to Phantom of the Opera, and she is very musical. I mean, she began playing piano at the age of, I think, 5 or 6. And, she was like you, loved to sing in front of crowds. And there was something about being pregnant and exposing our unborn child to those vibrations. And singing bowls are all about tones and vibrations and frequencies. And we'll get into that later because I'm excited. You're going to do a little bit of music for us with your singing bowls. So, what led you to come back to the United States? I think Dylan was a teenager or a youth at that time, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up Phantom of the Opera because I auditioned for that show for the first replacement of Sarah Brightman, so the first replacement of the lead, and I was down to the last four, and then I didn't get it, and it was like, wow, I don't know, there's something so magical about Broadway and about the theater and about that kind of just all music, but that was a very exciting time for me preparing for that and doing those auditions on the big stage there in New York. Um, so, gosh, I think life in Germany was coming to a close. I could sense that, and what had happened was I had brought Dylan. We had gone on a special trip of service in the United States. So after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, we had gone together with a youth group, and helped to rebuild after the hurricane. And he was just like, "Mom, I love it here. I want to go to high school here." And that's sort of that he put that little knock knock in there too, like, "Mom, let's do that." And it was just time. I don't know. It was time. So that's what happened. I eventually moved home. He went to high school here. I took a professorship at the university here, and yeah, it was time to be home and closer to my family again. So,
So you came back to LA, to Los
mhm,
Angeles,
mhm.
and took a professorship at,
University in Los Angeles, and
okay.
I was already teaching at the Munich Conservatory, so I was teaching in the musical theater department of the Munich Conservatory, and just recognized I had had fantastic training. Fran as an actor with someone named Bill Esper who came out of the neighborhood playhouse. Just those skills and all the skills that I had gained throughout my career doing both Broadway and classical, I started to implement. And then my teacher Annette that I spoke to you about, she had been presenting at the National Association of the Teachers of Singing, which is it's actually a worldwide organization, but there was a Swedish doctor that came there to present, and he showed a special breath support. And, in the technique of singing, there's different breath supports you can pull in, you can push out, you can there's all different kinds of ways to teach singing, but he taught a way of breath support that my teacher, it really lit her up. And he shared about working with stroke victims who had lost their voices, and he was helping them to rehabilitate their voices. So she adopted this technique, and now, many years later, it's been proven that so it's a lateral kind of breath support. So, like if you put your hands on your waist for a moment and you just laugh, or you gently cough, you can feel the muscles move laterally. It's what our body does naturally.
Yeah.
And so now it's been proven that when you use those that it's the transverse abdominis muscles and the internal external obliques, when you use those to support your voice, you get the most potential out of your range, you get the most overtones, the most breadth, the most expansiveness, the most powerful aspects of your sound when you use that kind of breath support. Now there's been many doctoral studies that have proven that. So she taught me that, and so armed with that and all the training I had, it was so fun, Fran, to teach. Like it was fun because I think what I learned as an artist is that we really live from here. And not only do we have this brain, but we have three brains. We have a brain in our gut, and we have a brain in our heart, and then this one. And this is the one that most of us use to guide us forward in our life. But this way of working, you use also your deep innate knowing. So it's a way of working with your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. It's a way of working with very much being present and not like moving forward with the chattering of our mind and the judgments and the fear and all this kind of, like what I was describing at the beginning, like when my friend said, don't be so deep. It was like, no, like this is who I am. It's like this kind of trust that I've got my artistic expression, I've got my scientific knowledge or my structural, and then in the end, my heart is the thing that has to express, because music is born really, as we've said, like from love and from the vibrations of the heart. So you want to prepare like an athlete and be trained in all the ways you can, but then you want to let go and deliver your unique magic. And that was the fun that I experienced as I started to put my way of teaching together. And I just watched miracles happen with the students, would get Broadway auditions and get the job. I created a class at the university that was a special class for dancers. So singing for dancers, because many dancers are nervous to have to then do a singing audition. Just like I was as a singer, I'd have to turn around like for the Broadway shows and do a dance audition, right? So it's, I think it's integrating this, cognitive mind with the more gut oriented and heart oriented way of knowing and expressing, and how do they come together in union. So I absolutely adore teaching, and now I'm teaching how to use the bowls, the singing bowls, and how music can be a medicine. And so I integrate also into those trainings. I teach over 120 hours of trainings, also using your voice, because this is the thing that's playing the singing bowls. So, right? And so how do I tune this human instrument? How do I make sure that my own human instrument, which is in this case playing the healing instruments, if I'm not tuned, they're not going to amplify in the most beautiful and healing way possible. I found those bowls 19 years ago. So I found them in the mid 2000s. And I was traveling with my mom. I'd come back home to the States and was traveling with my mom. And we saw that somebody was giving a demonstration. I was like, let's go. Because I loved the Tibetan singing bowls, the Himalayan singing bowls. And I had played those for years. There was a incredible shop in Dusseldorf near where I was living. I was living in Bonn, which was the then capital of Germany at the time. And so I had a small collection. And before performances, like I remember traveling to do a guest performance in Japan, I took two of those Himalayan singing bowls, and I'd put them on my belly. I'd I would warm up my voice, just get myself in my body using the Himalayan singing bowls. So when my mom and I saw this demonstration of crystal bowls, I was like, yeah, let's go check that out. And the second I heard them, it was like, wow. It was a sound that I don't know how else to explain it to you, Fran. Like it was a sound that I knew, some part of my being knew that sound, and just it was like it awakened something in me. It was something, again, so deep and so profound and so beautiful that I said to my mom, I got to get some of those. And so in the end, I bought 7, one for each energy center of the body, or one for each of your chakra centers. And in music, that makes a C major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And those are the 7 notes that I bought. And then I brought them home to Germany and I started playing them. My son was around 7 at the time, and he loved them. It's like, Mommy, Mommy, bring me to bed with my sound blanket. And so
Oh,
sometimes I'd put a bowl on his belly, and he'd love the vibrations going into his body. And it was totally different than the Himalayan bowls. That's what was so interesting to me. The Himalayan bowls have all these kind of overtones, and they're metal. They're usually made of 7 precious metals. These are quartz, so they're pure quartz that gets infused with different alchemies like gold or amethyst or rose quartz or charcoal or frankincense. So it's earth substances, precious metals, and precious gemstones. And, at the beginning, it was like, what is this? But there is something so pristine and exquisite in the sound. And my boy loved them. I would play them for friends. And then my students at the university at the time there in Munich, they loved them. So it was just interesting. And I was playing them more as a musical instrument, not as sound healing. I mean, that wasn't quite a thing as it is now. There was definitely music therapy. And at that time in Germany, I had started a kids foundation because I knew the power of music, and I knew that music had just so much to unify us, to help us express feelings that we couldn't express normally in words. And so I created a kids foundation where we did original productions. We wrote original productions for anywhere from 10 to 20 young people. And then the money we raised went to music therapy. So it's something I knew that music therapy was an incredible tool to help people, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't a music therapist, and I was a singer and teacher. But as I started working with the singing bowls, it was like, these are beyond anything I've known. And I learned later that because our bodies are quartz-like in structure, so our bones and our blood both have this quartz-like structure, the sound of the crystal singing bowls is very easily received by the body. It's different than if you hear the metal bowls or if you hear a gong. There's something, and I'll play for you. I get so excited. I'll play for you for those of you who haven't heard them yet. But there's something so pristine and so it grounds us, and at the same time, the sound expands us, and we drop into our soul. I don't know how else to say it. Is what many people experience, what I experienced.
yeah. The way that you've described it, I mean, you weren't a sound healer, you were a musician. And you had used the bowls to help, just to help others get into their own self, help their voice, amplify your own music talents, your own singing, and to be with that in a deeper way. And you talk about the different frequency of the bowl as well. If you can tell us a little bit about the transition, about why the healing became so important for you.
Yeah, I mean, uh, so much to share. I got stuck on when you said that. So I'll share that first. There's 3 main tunings. So, and that's important to know. So music today is tuned to 440 hertz. Music from the Baroque times. So when I was singing in Zurich at the opera, I sang a Scarlatti opera that we used. The orchestra was a Baroque orchestra, so it was tuned to 432 hertz. So it was lower than the 440. And then now today there's something called 444 hertz, or it's equivalent to 528 hertz. It depends which note. The 444 is based on an A note, and the 528 is based on the higher C note. But those are the 3 main frequencies or tunings that we talk about, and the bowls they come in those different tunings. some people say, oh, the only healing sound is 432 hertz. And it's like, it's not true. And people will say 440 hertz, that's the sound of the devil. Not true. If it was, I mean, that's all for the most part our music today. And 528 hertz is a little more elevated. In music, we'd say it's slightly sharp. So those are the three main tunings that you can use. And again, what's so interesting is that music as medicine is very individualized. Like, I can't say to you, okay, Fran, you have a headache. Let's give you a 440 amethyst bowl and let's use especially the note of the crown chakra. It doesn't work one to one like that. It really is so interesting. So this is the work of Dr. Sue Morter, my mentor that you mentioned at the beginning, and dear friend. So if we think about that, we have different blockages, and it may be from a trauma or a physical injury or whatever it is, a regret, a hurt, of an anger, and the energy gets blocked and the toric field gets distorted, right? And when we start playing the bowls, what happens is the sound goes into these places and they begin to dissolve. That's the easiest way that I can explain it. And the goal is that the body comes back into this perfect flow of, this is the bioenergetics principle, this perfect flow of energy, right? And so you may say, Jeralyn, I've got a really bad headache, but the original wounding or the original core of why that headache or the constant headaches may be that there was something that happened in the root chakra that was about you grounding and feeling stable in your life, right? So, it's easy enough to say, okay, I want that note because that's where the pain is located, but it doesn't work like that. So what flipped me over into using the bowls as really music medicine was the passing of my son. And I know you mentioned, today he would be 30, and he passed at 19. And of course, as a parent, like, no parent wants that phone call. No parent wants to experience that kind of loss because it's not the normal scheme of things. We know that at some point our parents will go, perhaps our partner goes before us, but a child, that's not normal. And we say when we lose a parent, we lose our past, and when we lose a partner, we lose our present, and we lose a child, we lose our future. But Dylan has taught me that I didn't lose a future, and that there's a much bigger picture to him going early, and like a soul purpose, because I feel such a strong connection. And as you shared, like, that's what the book is partly about how sound, especially intentional sound, can build a bridge that helps to connect us, heaven, earth, whatever that means for each of us, the visible and the invisible, the cosmos and the physical world. But sound is that connector. It builds that bridge that the thinking mind, as I mentioned earlier, the volume gets turned down and suddenly you're in this experience. And that's what happened on the night that Dylan died. I walked down to the beach where I live in Southern California just to be with nature and try to just, I was in shock, trying to just figure out what the heck happened. And it can't be my life and it can't be my beautiful son. This wasn't in the plan. Like, this can't be. And I was with a very close friend that had known Dylan in Germany. He also lived in Germany since he was a little boy. And we looked up at the sky and there was this huge shooting star. And, if you can imagine, LA is a big city. It's bright. I grew up there. I never had seen a shooting star in the city. Up in the mountains, yes. And then it was like this big upside down smile. And I could hear his voice, Mom, it's like we always talked about. I'm home. I'm with God. And I knew in that flash that he was referring to when I would bring him to bed with singing bowls, because we would do meditation. And it was just the most intimate, precious, rare, beautiful moments that I shared with my young son, playing those bowls and guiding him in prayer and in meditation and in connection to God, whatever that was for him. So that began this journey of There's so much more to this picture, Geraldine, than you can possibly imagine, because it became, for the last years, it became the balancing act of, how do I breathe and feel grief when every cell in you is going, no, 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 you don't want to feel it. And 3 different medical doctors said we should put you on an antidepressant. And, I knew it was like, why? If you can give me a pill that'll bring my Dylan back, I'll take that immediately. But why numb me out? I have to be strong enough to be able to feel what it feels like to land in loss. And your mind is like trying to figure it out. And, I think about my singing teacher always saying to me, what are you listening for? Don't listen with your mind. You have to listen with the feel of your body. And she'd say, nothing vibrates here. And I understood that more and more. I had to get into my body, Fran, and I had to be able to have the courage to feel what grief and loss feel like so that I could integrate it once again and not live distorted like that. So this process of the last 11 years has been, how is music my medicine? How did it work playing with the singing bowls? And again, like, nobody taught me this. As I said earlier, I wasn't trained as a music therapist, but suddenly I was playing. Actually, it was a selenite bowl, and selenite is about, the alchemy is about grounded white light. And suddenly I just started. The bowl was screeching. I started keening and groaning and expressing grief that I couldn't express it in that way in talk therapy. And I was sometimes 6 hours a week in talk therapy trying to talk out what happened. Could I have done anything? Why did we have that fate? Why did Dylan have to go early? Why? And you spin and spin and spin, and there's no answer. He's gone. But suddenly, with music and with the bowls, I was able to release deep levels of grief and build this connection that has become so stable and so strong with him in spirit. And it's like, there'd be times where I'd say to my mom, like, Mom, like, really, what happened to this classical musician, this professor who's now talking to her son on the other side and playing these crystal singing bowls? I mean, I lost it, Mom. And she'd say, no, no, dear, you're helping so many people, because I started in my own grief. I just knew that if I didn't, I was laying in my bed every day, and I took a leave from the university, and it was like, if I don't make myself get out of my bed, I'm never going to get out of my bed. And then I got this inspiration to call the Cancer Support Comminity, which is a nonprofit that works with cancer patients and their families, to offer sound baths. Now, I'd never really given a sound bath per se. I mean, I had played the bowls, as I said, as instruments. I had used them with my singing students, and I'd watched where my singing students would take one bowl and I'd have them, ah, ah, just make their sound, open their voice with a bowl, and the blockage in their voice would shift. So I had done that, but I had never led a formal sound bath. So I wrote myself scripts. I took different themes, and I showed up with my bowls at the Cancer Support Community, and my life changed and their life changed. And, I anchored myself into, what does this mean? What is the power of sound and music to actually help us go in those places? And I watch them shift. And I would experience cancer patients saying to me, what's that bowl? And they'd say, I felt it. One lady said, I felt it in my lower abdomen. That's just where I had my chemo, and 3 different women that had mastectomies, all 3 different sound baths, saying to me, I don't know how to put it in words. They would say, but I'm not missing any part of myself anymore. I'm whole. This is the most unexpected feeling. So, and I was experiencing these incredible moments with cancer patients. Fran, I think what was the biggest aha to all of us is that after every session, there was nothing but love in that room. And this whole path emerged. I could never have imagined it or dreamed about it in my wildest dreams. It was like my son was guiding me, like, Mom, this is the way we're going to move through grief. And in the process, there's a whole bigger picture to your life as a musician than you ever imagine. And, part of me, because he communicates, and that in the book, I tell all different kinds of stories of his signs and his communications. Like this is one of the reasons why I just love Dr. Sue forever. This is at the top of Machu Picchu. And I traveled with her there, and there's this beam of light that comes down from Dylan's picture to the heavens. And, you know, it's like these signs became more and more norm. And when I would land deep in grief and just be out of myself, I couldn't find him. And then I would panic even more, like, where is he? Until I began to realize, Geraldine, if you allow yourself to stay for long periods of time just in the excruciating pain of grief, and you can't function at all, of course he can't reach you. How is he going to reach you through that devastation? Your job is to do as much work as you can to breathe and feel through the grief and then let it move, and that you stay more and more open, like what I was experiencing with the cancer patients. And then suddenly he was there and the communications were there. So, I mean, it's been a journey, Fran, of, I miss my boy terribly. I mean, but you see, there's joy in my face. My face gets lit up, and I'll tease him and go like, "Son, I don't remember making that soul contract with you that you were going before me. And when I see you again, we're gonna have a little talk about that." And he just laughs, but it's just like, God, this can't be. It can't be my life, and it can't be my son. We were so close, thinking back to that Beethoven, and just, that's called the Ode to Joy, that section of the vocal section of the Ninth Symphony. And it's like, and those words talk about far beyond the light that we can see, there's a light above, and everything comes from there. And it's like, the more I got into what the Beethoven was really about, we created a modern version of that called Joy Reboot. So if you listen to that on any of the streaming platforms or on our YouTube channel, Crystal Cadence, Joy Reboot, I took that melody of Beethoven, I revamped the German words and wrote a modern version with some of my friends are in it singing and playing bass, and then there's crystal bowls infused in it. And it's like, how do we find through music this place of the ineffable, this place where there are no words, where you just know, you hear, you perceive, you trust, and permeating through all of that is love, just LOVE, love.
You said something super interesting. When you were in that state of deep, deep grief and sadness, he he did not come. He couldn't come through that. And I think about those levels, the frequencies of all the emotions, right? And joy is at the top, or is love at the top? But I mean, you go down through those stages. Gratitude is up at the top, but down there's that baseline. And then anything below that, jealousy and anger and sadness, those deep, deep, you're vibrating so slowly. Everything is so heavy down here. It makes total sense that you couldn't talk to him because he can't come through that for you,
And I would panic, because it was
right?
like especially at the beginning when, the majestic sign of the light beam in Machu Picchu. And then there was one time where I went to visit a friend in the hospital who was pregnant, and there was difficulty with the baby, and she asked me if I'd come play bowls for her. And she knew Dylan very well. And as I was driving home, I got so livid. And I just said to him, "Why can't you be here? Why? Everybody loved you. We wanted to be together. Why?" And I kind of lost it. And boom, my radio popped on, and I was at a stop sign, and it popped on the screen, and I write about this in the book. It said Dylan, and it was like, oh my God. So just saying that the anger, which anger can be very, very grounding if we allow it to propel us in a positive direction, But the radio started playing, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world, with Louis Armstrong. And I'm like, what? So it was like he was going, Mom, and he was a big boy. He was 6'3" and 230 pounds. So like, I mean, when he said or did something, it was big. But it was like, because I was so locked in that, he cut right through that density, cut through the density of my anger with a song. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I stopped at the stop sign and I took my phone out and I took a picture of it, because it was just like, I mean, you can't make this up. So that was a message that it was one of those moments where it's like, Mom, don't you dare. And don't you dare stay down in those lower vibrations. We have things to do. And recognizing that, I don't want to say it was a sacrifice, but recognizing that if we think about that, we have soul contracts, and we think about the partners and the people in our lives, and people come and people go, like in this lifetime, he was meant to go before me. And so interesting, like in the first 2 weeks after he passed, I was on a call that someone recommended with a psychic, and there's hundreds of people on the call, and she said, someone in here just lost a child. Someone in here lost a son. And I'm like, oh, she's talking to me. And it was like, yes. And she just said, boom. She said, you know that he was never meant to live a long life. And every hair on my body stood on end, because I knew it was true, but I had never formally had that thought. And she said, whether it was now or 3 or 4 years later, he was never going to live a long life. And it was just like, wow, Jeralyn, these are things that were supposed to be. You never think about that as your own life. Like, you don't dare go there in your own life. But I think this whole process, and being steeped in music from a very young age, and knowing the power music has to unite us, uplift us, help us express what's in our heart, fill us with love. It was like, this is a path bigger than you ever could have imagined. This is not about singing on Broadway or singing on the big opera stages of the world. This is about becoming an instrument of love and transforming the deepest, most, not ugly, but just the deepest, one of the hardest things to feel, which is why I knew I can't numb myself. I can't take a pill. It's not ever going to make it go away. I have to be able to feel it and process it, whatever that means. When I described playing the selenite bowl and it sounded like nails on a chalkboard, of course, as a musician, I'm going, part of my mind is going, what are you doing wrong? But, there's nothing that you can do wrong. You swirl the bowl, you tap the bowl, you swirl it in the other direction. Like it's not a hard instrument to play like the piano or the violin or whatever. So the first thing was like, what are you doing wrong? And then what I recognized later was quartz being the great amplifier, transmitter, and receiver. It was amplifying the grief, and the grief sounded like nails on a chalkboard. And as I started to work with cancer patients, I recognized all the depth of these feelings that we go through. How do we create a safe container and a safe space to breathe and feel them? And not just talk them out, but actually feel them, where they're vibrating in your body and they begin to move. They become fluid. Oh my gosh. I mean, Fran, there's so much to say. Play for you.
Oh, yes, please.
So for you today, this is a chakra set, what I mentioned earlier. So just take a listen. Okay, so you perhaps recognize that as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. So now what I do is I put something lower beneath it. So this would be very rooting, helping people to ground. And then I put some things above it. So can you feel that those higher notes accelerate? They take you up here. So what I'm technically doing, what I wanted to share with you, is we're building the bridge through sound. So the lowest sound starts below the feet, below the body. These sounds travel up through the body. time I love to build unique orchestras. I put the, I don't know if you can see these. This is the Hathor, the goddess Hathor from ancient Egypt. And then this is the flower of life symbol with made of gold. So those are two ancient energies from Egypt where we have references to the Egyptians using sound and sound healing chambers for health and wellness. So, and this is a dolphin bowl that brings in joy. And, you know, you said a little bit before about these elevated emotions. So also within joy, because joy, and that's what blew my mind, is like, how can I be sitting in grief and there's light in my eyes? That first session where I played that the bowls sounded like nails on a chalkboard, I went to the bathroom after about 50 minutes to go wash my face, and I saw there was light in my eyes. And I'm like, what happened? Like, what is this magic medicine? What is it? It's sound, it's music. I knew that from, you know, years of being a musician and singing, but it was like these bowls, the one single bowl that I used, transformed that grief into light. I saw it with my own eyes. It was wild. Yeah, so there's all different elements of gold and palladium, and this big one in the back is smoky quartz. So it's always for me putting together a set that's going to help people ground, it's going to help them center, and it's going to help them expand. And each of us will do that in our own way. As I said, like, there's no one prescription where I can say, okay, Fran, like, for example, where do you feel this bowl? Let me play it for a moment. Where do you experience that sound?
Right here. And then it went actually down a bit. It went down into my solar plexus. It started here, though.
Okay, so that's so interesting. So this is smoky quartz. Smoky quartz is a very grounding element, really, from the earth. And the note is a G note. So you're right on. The G note is at the throat, but here's the G note in the body. Okay? So you can feel that. That's what we call in the middle octave. This is the G note below the body. So when I play these two together, you felt the smoky in your throat, and that was correct. That's the note of the G, but it's super grounding. Then you felt it move down to your solar plexus. Now, if I played you this note, which is the solar plexus, where do you feel that?
Actually, I feel it in my root. It's actually in my root.
Mm-hmm. So this is, and that's that element in that bowl is Sedona red rock. So it's very much about activating the sacral chakra. It's Sedona, for those of you who've been there, is a very magical place. It's a vortex, but it's a beautiful, very spiritual place in the world. But you felt it at your root.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm saying is that when we work with the alchemy bowls, because they're a multi-layered instrument, you know, it's going to work here at your root. The Sedona might be clearing something in your root that will then help to free up the solar plexus. This is what, it's not up to us to figure out. It's up to us, so for me as a practitioner, to create a safe space where you feel so comforted and so held that you allow yourself to drop into those places where we don't know with the thinking mind, where are they in my body? Where are the blockages? Oh, I feel it in my lower abdomen. Oh, I feel something in my throat. So we want to go in there and breathe and let the sound move. It's such a fascinating and creative world. And if someone had said that to me when I first got those bowls 19 years ago, I could never have imagined it. But that first time in the throes of grief, just like desperate and devastated, that one bowl with its screeching sound, you know, amplifying and reflecting what was going on in me, that held me. And after that screeching nails on the chalkboard stopped, I saw joy in my eyes. So what pill could do that, Fran? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like what, we can't plan it. I just have to play. You know, what is the joy? The dolphin, and this is aqua gold. Where do you feel that?
I feel it actually up here in my head. Like, I think it started here somewhere in my cheeks. And then it moved up.
And do you sense joy? If you would describe that feeling in your head, what is it?
It feels like, I love to fly. So for me, it's like that when the jet engines get going and it's ready to take off, that the speed and just like that excitement of boom, like you're going up in the air, like leaving the earth. That's that feeling I have. It's like, let's do it. Let's go.
So also, okay, for everyone that's listening, I'm sure each one of you is going to have a different experience of those bowls that I just played and where you feel them in your body. So it's super important to honor that. In addition to what you just said, Fran, like there is that element of awe and wonder. And, you know, science uses these words a lot because it's hard to explain where science and spirit intersect. And that's, I think, this power of the ineffable quality of the crystal bowls is how do we bridge that? What is the connection between science and spirit? There's awe, there's wonder, there's this joy about I'm just going to be taking off. Now you felt that with the gold, aqua gold bowl carved with dolphins, and it actually happens to be the sacral chakra. So it's your creative, your womb. So there's no right or wrong. The important thing for everyone is how do you feel? Where does this sound activate in your body? Is there energy that's stuck there that you need to move and breathe through? This is the way that we work with the singing bowls. And again, like I've worked for years now with the cancer patients, with hospice patients as they cross over, their families, veterans who have PTSD, patients with Parkinson's, like it school children, like it's so fun because, so listen. And gently bringing the palms of your hands together and rubbing them to generate heat. When your hands are nice and warm, I invite you to tenderly begin to stroke them through your scalp. Gently caress your cheeks. And then begin to tap. Tapping your chest, your shoulders, your upper arms, your wrists. And then tapping down your central channel, down between your chest area, your belly, and down to your hips, perhaps your thighs. And then gently stretching and yawning and opening your eyes.
That was amazing. You know, Jeralyn, when you were like you were doing the wand and then tapping and there'd be all those different sounds, it sometimes it almost became too much. But then you would do something else over here and it would back up a bit and then it would move somewhere, like I could feel this movement. And in my mind, I could, I was almost starting to make a story. Like I'm a teacher, right? I taught elementary students. So it felt like it was a story where it was like little bits of this and little bits of that. And then this big event started happening in the story. And then we tap it, we resolve something. And it was just this movement. It was real. It was like a voice. It was like a voice of a story being played, and I could have put words to it. When I listened to it again, what would have been the words of the story that went with that, with those singing bowls? It was incredible.
It's really beyond the thinking mind. So, like, you may find that as you repeat this short meditation and you allow words to come, it guides you to a place that you had no idea of. And then suddenly you're guided to that place and something releases, something opens, and you have an aha, right? Or you pull up a memory. Like the one gal that one of my students, I had her choose a bowl. She was having trouble getting up in her higher range. Um, and suddenly she played that bowl and she had a traumatic memory from childhood. I wrote about that in the book. And it was like, who could ever have imagined? So it's like we have this beautiful crystalline symphony. And the way I play, I love to just play it like that. And then it's going to touch in you exactly what needs to be touched in you. So everybody that's listening will have a different experience than you have just had and you just beautifully described. That's the
Amazing.
magic of music medicine.
Yeah. And there is science to it as well. There is science to that, and you talk a lot about it in the book. This how science and spirit now have started to unite for actually some of the best healing of the physical body, like with cancers and with, like you said, Parkinson's and other types of PTSD. I've got so many examples in the book of physical healings that have happened as a result of the singing bowls.
Yes. But I think for me, the most incredible is that I thought I would never get out of my bed ever again. I thought life was over. I had no idea how to live. And something else birthed beyond what I could ever have imagined. So it's like, there's so many things in our lives that we each are challenged by, and there is no prescription pill for those things. So what do we do? How do we tune the instrument? How do we heal? We each have to find our own way, and so is it a chakra set in the key of C, or am I going to play a different orchestra? Today, do I want to listen to the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, or do I want to listen to a SZA song or Pharrell Happy, or what is it that I want to listen to? What helps my soul to move energy, to feel present in this body, to feel grounded in life, and feel that I'm hopeful, as you so beautifully speak about, that I can be hopeful about things and don't have to feel that life has just struck me down.
Yeah, and I feel that, like, actually my heartbeat is quickened, right? I could feel my heart beating faster
Mhm.
because of the bowls. I can't explain that. I can't explain it other than there's something within the vibrations of the combination of bowls you have there that just did that for me.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah, and that's why my son was like, Mom, you got to make this available to people. So he encouraged me to create the YouTube channel where there's over 200 free meditations, and they're all different sets. So sometimes people will write me and say, I love this set. What was that about? Or I really love this one, or this one helps me to sleep, or whatever. So there's 3 2-hour loops. There's all different combinations to find for you what's your medicine today. And then we created an app. Called Source, and that same thing. It was like, he wanted me to have the ability to give the people this in their back pocket. So on the app Source, Be Inspired, there's all kinds of things about science and spirituality. There's long sound baths. There's all different things for people to explore this field and to really become empowered that we do have ways to help transform ourselves. We're not just a victim. We don't have to wait till there's the right prescription. We can actually create the music and the medicine that we need.
You have a set of cards as well
Yeah.
with QR codes on them.
Yeah. That was the first project that I did with Hay House.
Crystal Sound Healing Oracle, right? And how do
Yeah.
those work, Jeralyn?
So, and that's another thing my between my mom and my son, there's a QR code on the front, and each card has beautiful photographs or watercolor art and sacred geometry. And that was the other thing that Dylan, I tell the story in the book, that he was like, Mom, we're going to do a card deck. And I'm like, son, leave me alone. I'm grieving you. Please. But then he got really loud and it was like, Mom, you got to do the card deck now. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. And then, gave me the message and we put a QR code on it. And the QR code leads people to be able to hear the sounds of the bowls. And yeah, all that happened so fast that 3 weeks later, I was referred to Hay House, and there I was having a conversation with the head of Hay House, and I said I have this card deck and this book idea, and boom, and then I had the 2 contracts. So it was like, I just encourage everybody to follow their guidance, to follow their inner wisdom, to open their hearts, to trust like how you can do things with music that'll help tune you, and that you come more and more and more to your authentic wisdom, to your authentic self, and you hear the voice within, that true voice, the one that the kids said to me, don't be so deep, and I'm like, this is me. I am that. I don't know. Yeah.
So, what is your YouTube channel for the people that are listening to our podcast today? Can you
It's
tell us what your YouTube is?
Yes, it's Crystal Cadence. So that's my business, and I chose that name because crystal is what I'm working with, the crystalline instruments, and a cadence is a musical structure. So that everything I do with the sound is in a musical coherence. So, for example, just that you understand that. So, like, if you hear that, that's not coherent. For me, I wouldn't feel safe. But if I hear this, these are more coherent sounds, right? And so I took the name Cadence because that is a musical structure. And I feel very strongly because if someone had given me really dissonant sounds when I was in the grief, I would have just said, go away, right? Because the grief itself is dissonant enough. So we're already, all of us, no matter where we are in the world, experiencing some kind of dissonance and disharmony, right? So I feel really strongly about the structure of the crystal cadence, to keep us in a coherent structure so that we then feel safe to dive in and breathe and feel whatever is in there. So that's Crystal Cadence is the YouTube channel, and as I said, there's over 200 meditations. There's albums that are available. Everything is on our website, Crystal Cadence.
And you have a teaching school as well, where you teach
Yes.
others to do the bowls as well. If we were interested in that, that would be through Crystal Cadence as well.
Yes, that would all that everything is on the website, and I have a new class that I'm starting for the first time in October. So, and because most of my passion has gone into teaching people how to use the bowls and how to be practitioners for others, or it just simply for themselves in their own lives. But this is for everybody. This will be a class where you don't need to have singing bowls. This will be for you to explore with me, kind of what we've done today, like, okay, what are these tunings? What does it mean if, Jeralyn plays the dolphin bowl, and what does that do for you? What does it do for each of us? It's going to be something different. So it's really an exploration into this world of what is alchemy crystal sound? What is it? And why are we talking about this as really um, the instrument that can help us in a way that nothing else can? It's the harp is incredible. It's beautiful. The flute, the harmonium, chanting, all of that. But there's something very unique about the crystal singing bowls. And I, just firsthand. So I wanted to create a class, and that's on our website. And it's a part of kind of sacred vibrations. It's bringing sacred vibrations in your daily life. But it really was for everyone with me to explore what is this world, and how can it help me. So not to train to be a practitioner, but all that is on the website, Crystal Cadence. And then the school that you mentioned is called the Sacred Science of Sound, and that began in 2017 with Dylan saying to me, Mom, we're going to do an online series. I'm like, what? Leave me alone. I'm grieving you. And he's like, no, Mom, we're doing an online series, and it's called the Sacred Science of Sound. And I'm like, son, first of all, it should be called the Science of Sacred Sound. No, Mom, it's the Sacred Science of Sound. And that was our first summit. And, people like Greg Braden, India Ari have been a part of the summits. David Permal and Matan, the beautiful chant singers, have been a part. Dr. Bruce Lipton. So it gathered really serious people in the field. Marianne Williamson has been a part of it. And so he's kind of there behind me, cheerleading me. And it's like, I'd rather have you here. And it's like, Mom, just get over it. There's a bridge, and I'm always here, right? It's just a different way of looking at our lives.
It's wonderful. Is there a last message of hope you have for whoever's listening to you today?
First of all, thank you for what you do with hope, because
Thank
hope
you.
is something, it's essential. We need that. I think just in the spirit of our conversation today is we're never alone. You're never a victim. And even though you might get buried, like I was describing, in that grief where it's just excruciating, or physical pain, or whatever it is you're going through, there is always hope. And that hope is energy, and it's light, and it's sound vibration, it's music. So, if you're feeling really down and don't see the light, think of a song that you absolutely love and put that song on. And just know, like what Fran is giving us, there is always reason to hope, always. And that things can shift in a moment. It can be dark, and suddenly, boom, the first star comes out and the sky is twinkling. So just to remember that. Use music to be a medicine for you. If you're feeling down, put on something that makes you feel joyful. Put on the Pointer Sisters. I'm so excited. I don't know, whatever it is for you that you really love to hear, put that on and move your body and allow your heart to be filled with hope.
Oh, great words. Awesome. So
Ah.
if you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe. It will help me get the message of hope out. It will help Jeralyn and getting the message of hope in this world today. We need hope. It's like you said, hope is energy. Hope is a vibration, and it heals. Hope heals, and it can be like on a dime that things change. So thank you, Jeralyn. It's been a pleasure having you. It's just I feel so good. Right now, I feel really good. Like I feel super good. So there's hope. There is always hope. So thank you, Jeralyn. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
This podcast and Inspired Healing Hypnotherapy do not provide medical advice. The information included here is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained, and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this site.